gonna go ahead and, good evening, everybody. I'm Nancy Stolz. I'm on the board of directors of Blackstone Library. And I'm honored to be here tonight to welcome you to this wonderful program of the Art of Container Gardening. Mark Gostkiewicz.
You got it.
I think a lot of you have already met. I don't know why I'm introducing him because I saw him running around the room. He's passionate for sustainable farming. He began with his first job at the certified organic Highland Thistle Farm in Canterbury, Connecticut. You all know those in Canterbury, Connecticut? Where he learned about holistic management and sustainable practices. He later worked at Hart's greenhouses, where he was inspired by the successful farm business run by Dave and Joyce Park. Their family-owned farm, Gable, is located on Marvin Road in Colchester, Connecticut. It's an honor to manage this. Mark feels it's an honor to manage this sacred farmland, which has been passed down for generations. Mark is a middle and high school math teacher and certified in special education. He and his family started working on their own garden when they moved to Marvin Road in 2008. 2023 marks their 10-year anniversary and their expansion into branding their passions. They love the earth and continue to keep the homestead going by being in the loop. Yeah. They've also been lifelong outdoor enthusiasts. Hiking, traveling, biking, kayaking, surfing, boating, and fishing is something they've always done together. That makes me tired just saying all that. Please welcome Mark Gostkiewicz.
Thank you. All right. I'm a hot fella. Oh, that's okay. It's not nervous. I'm just like, I'm a sweaty fella. All right. Welcome. And now you know too much about me. So yeah, thanks for the intro. In starting like a school farm garden at my school, I've taught lots of students how to grow things. And honestly, if middle schoolers can do it, yeah, you can too. And bumping around and talking to so many people ahead of time, it helps me to kind of know who's in the room and what made you interested. And really, there's a lot of diversity. Like there are people who have been growing forever in here, and people who are just starting out. And this class is for everybody. With container gardening, it can be one of the harder ways of growing stuff. Growing things just because the plant is all on its own. It's in a container. It can't tap into the soil. That's what we get into. Okay, so shameless plugs, right? We should do shameless plugs. I got a website, yay, and I do teach other classes. And if you want me to come back and teach other classes here, yeah, go ahead and let your directors know. And yeah, I do have some of these pre-recorded. Yeah, they're interesting, right? They're cool. Okay, so and like these are all the things that I'm like geeked out and interested in, and that I've like mastered how to do, and I teach you how to do them. Okay, so anyway, if you even want to like, follow me around, there's my schedule of like other libraries that I teach at. And so I'm gonna be, tomorrow I'm going at where? Atwater? Yeah, in North Brentford. Is that part of this group or? Well, yes. But yeah. So I'll be there doing Fungi Frenzy, like learning how to grow mushrooms outdoors in your backyard. So if you're interested and there's room, maybe register for that. Okay, enough of this. Here's what I want you to know is that I've emailed, I forgot your name. I'm so sorry. Jenna, I emailed Jenna. So sorry. So I emailed Jenna a copy of this. Now, if you register for this class, she's got your email, not me. She's got it. She'll email you this handout, which is really handy because it's a digital handout. And as you scroll through, eventually there's more than what I print out for you. And then there's like a whole bunch of links. So links to places where you could buy stuff that I trust, seed suppliers. I just like to keep you learning. And sometimes I put in videos and stuff like that. So anyway, all right. So all that's there. And she has my permission to also email you the presentation. I was just editing it today. You have access to it forever. So you can when I talk and do these things, there's so much stuff to convey to you that you're going to need to sit down like later on with it and be like, oh, I really liked that part. So sit down with the presentation and just look at the slides like nice and close. There's no need to like rush and take notes. It's all here for you to revisit. So when I'm a flow state of mind kind of presenter, so I'm going to end up like talking about, I will generally go in an order, but I talk about whatever pops in my head at, you know, in any moment. Yay. Like my daughter, she's at UConn right now. She's at summer camp. It's a Spark program that's just for young ladies who are in middle school to do like STEM stuff. That's what's in my mind, is like, is she going to message me? Is she going to like freak out while I'm not here? And so far, so good. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. All right. So, all right. Yeah. Okay, that's who we are. Try Gable Leaf Farm. So here's the thing: is that in designing, I know the title, the art of container gardening, everything, designing, planning, maintaining. Okay, so a lot of what I focus on is going to be some of the details of just growing stuff that I've learned in organic gardening and farming and in conventional growing that the pros do. It's what they do on a large scale. And when you go to a greenhouse and you buy like little transplants or you buy potted plants, those are containers. Those are container gardens that they have started. They're keeping them alive until you are ready to buy them and then pot them up into something bigger. And so a lot of the stuff that I teach are they're the ways that those professionals innately think of. So we jump in. Okay, we jump in. So it's not going to be any of this. Yeah. So this is beyond no-till gardening, because you're not going to dig. You're not going to get the rototiller out. You see my props right here. Yes. So yes. Okay. So the main purpose of like having these bag containers up here is to give you an idea of size, of volume. I stepped away from the video. It's okay. So feel free later on, take pictures, take whatever. Yes, they have price tags and stuff like that, but like whatever. You don't have to buy anything. The whole point is to give you a visual of how big are some of these things. And like, all right, right now you could do like a little quiz for yourself. If we look at like, okay, so this, that one, we got, I'm just trying to clump them out here. So we got the 20, the 10, the 7, the 5, and the 3 again. Okay. And so in your head, I want you to think of which one might be the ideal size for a tomato. Go ahead, take this as like a challenge. Lock it in your head, like which one, and we'll tell you the answers later on. Okay, yay. All right. So, but you can have like a little game with it right now. So which one might be ideal for one tomato plant? And, oh, you don't have to shout it out. We'll get there. So, but no, this is a competition with yourself. You don't have to be right for everybody. So go ahead, like write down your answer and like which one of these might be like ideal for carrots? That's a different answer. And which one might be the best for some flowers? And so you got some answers in your head, and as we get through it, we'll look at these. I also have a couple of my favorite books. Don't worry, these 2 books are like linked into the handouts and everything. One of them is the week by week vegetable growers handbook. This is a journal. So this is like one of these like really cool books that as you flip through it, it tells you what you can do at different times of the year. Like, okay. Like right now at this time of the year, it's saying that like I bookmarked it, by the way. Okay, it's not like magic. You know, I put a sticky note there. It says that like things that we could actually be planting still, we could still be planting like kale and parsley and some root crops for fall harvest. So like books like this help you dial in the timing of what to do during the year. I'm not related with anybody who does that book, but awesome book. Because part of the success of gardening is timing the when are you going to do things. There is a huge window to do tomatoes. You could plant tomatoes today and have September tomatoes. You absolutely can. Could you plant beefsteak tomatoes today and have them in September? No, because those fruits are gigantic. Beefsteak tomatoes, those big slicers, okay? Those are such a big fruit that the plant needs to get so big to produce that fruit. I haven't even passed into the container gardening thing, but my God, okay, let's get to something. Don't worry, flow state of mind. I'll come back to those tomatoes. And I'll come back to the other book. So there's different types of like raised beds and stuff like that. These are not like my best watercolors. So that's me defending myself as an artist. These are just simple illustrations. Okay. So, but because I don't want to pay anybody for these, I just want to make my own pictures. Raised beds might be what, so you don't have to raise your hands, but I think a lot of people come to a class like this and they think of container gardening as raised beds. I don't, because just like looking at the picture right here, what can those plants do that a container garden can't is that those plants can tap into the native soil that's there and keep growing down and expanding. They have no bottom to them. So a raised bed here. So I think I said this when I was over there. Some of you might have heard it, and I'll just say it now, which is I'm going to talk about container gardening. And if you master growing things in containers, you can grow in raised beds. You can grow in big, larger plots. Container gardening is easy, but because the plant is all on its own and can't tap into the ground, when you forget to water it, it can't go deeper for water. It's on your deck. It's on your patio. It needs you. And so if you can container garden, then you can grow things anywhere else. So this is like an extreme thing. So like, yeah, that's like a foot deep. And so this is from this book, the Square Foot Gardening book. How many of you have heard of the Square Foot Gardening? Some of you maybe. Oh my God, so many people who haven't. Okay, yes. They're on the 3rd edition now because this book's been out for like decades. And here's the thing is that the updated version of the Square Foot Gardening book is amazing because it has so many tips and tricks, again, built into it for the timing of when should you plant. So I'm going to put in some pictures here. It's not advertisements for these, but isn't that my job to like help curate stuff and say, these have helped me. They're going to help you. And as the library, like, we get these into interlibrary loan systems and you get them for free. So the Square Foot Gardening book is all about like, how much space should you give each plant? So how much room should you give each plant? And so within this, I wouldn't put a tomato plant in anything smaller than a 7-gallon container. Because a tomato plant grows tall, it's big, but it needs a big root system in order to pull in lots of nutrients to make all those little fruits that you want. And here's the thing is that beefsteak tomatoes, I'm going to keep coming back to those versus little cherry tomatoes. The amount of energy to make those beefsteak tomatoes is intense. That plant needs to get gigantic. And you are better off trying to grow that in the ground rather than in a container. So what are you hearing me? I'm not saying don't grow tomatoes. I'm saying choose tomatoes that are on the smaller side because it's going to be easier for the plant to make those smaller fruits. So in that pattern's going to keep coming up. With cucumbers, choose cucumbers that are on the smaller side because the fruits, to make any one fruit successful and like to have it mature enough where you're like, I want to eat that cucumber, versus like, oh, it's too small. I'm going to wait for it to grow. So that is a little bit of what you'll hear. Okay. We got this 4 C's. Okay. I don't know. The 4 C's of container gardening. Plant choice, which we'll spend a lot of time on because a lot of time is matching the right size container to the right plant. You're either going to be like, I got this container and this is what can I grow in it? Or you're going to be like, we really want to grow this. That's what I really want to grow, this and this and this. How big of a container do I need for it? Okay, so we'll spend a good chunk of time on that. And then the right container volume that matches with that. The right conditions. So soil. So we're going to talk about like, what are some of the mixes that you could use for this? Okay, I'm not going to my garden and digging up soil from the garden because that garden soil put in a container is going to behave very different than when it's out in nature. And it'll compact when it's in a container and it won't allow as much airflow to go in because the roots actually do need to breathe. Okay, and then also just talk, so like the last end part of this is to talk about, what we're hints on watering and hints on like resetting it each year. Yay. Okay. tiny little thing of like a lot of the ways that I think are through permaculture and organic methods. That is, so a lot of the ways that I'm thinking about plants growing is I'm trying to mimic natural processes. So I'm trying to like mimic the idea of like a forest floor or a savanna-like area where the grasses have died and you have so many layers of decaying things. So what we're going to do is build containers that don't just have potting soil, but have nutrients built into it that'll sustain the plant over the whole like summer that you're growing it. So I am going to be looking at the time span of like a growing season, a summer. After the nutrients have been like depleted from that, you're going to have to kind of do some resetting every year. Okay, so adding more things into decay. And here's the simple thing is that compost is going to be one of our like golden, like amazing things that we can put into this mix. So, and if you don't know what compost is, it's okay. We all started out somewhere. And whether it's you make it on your own or you buy it in some bags, compost is one of the best things that we're going to have for success. Okay, thinking what they need. Okay, well, let's get past these purple slides. Okay, so today I'm trying something different. You don't know this, but I know this. I'm changing the order in which I'm teaching about these. I'm starting with the plants. Okay, so we're going to start with what plants like are going to be great in the container garden. That's just like a purple screen. There we go. So when I come around and I was asking you folks earlier, what are you interested in? We get a lot of variety. I heard people talk about pollinator gardens. I heard people talk about herbs and talk about veggies, talk about flowers. Those are all going to have lots of different needs. You're going to see that this focuses on veggies. And why? So we step back. I have no pictures for this. Okay, so it's just me. Yay. Okay. Think about, I'm just going to go to an herb. Think about an herb like basil, thyme, oregano, just, basic herbs. What do they need to be successful? They need to grow. Oh, I mean, for us, I'm not even talking about like, what do they need? They just need to grow and produce some leaves. And then we cut those leaves and we eat them, right? And we put them in whatever we're cooking. That's herbs for you. Okay. What does a flower need to do to be successful? Well, a flowering plant needs to grow all of those leaves. It needs to grow stems. It needs to get to a certain maturity that it then produces flowers. Yeah, it's successful and we like it because it looks pretty. Okay, so what does a vegetable plant need to do to be successful? It needs to go through all of those steps. Typically, it needs to grow leaves, photosynthesize, pull in nutrients, grow stems, grow bigger, grow flowers. Those flowers need to get pollinated. And then those flowers need to end up turning into fruit. And those fruit need to size up. So those fruit need to keep, the plant needs to keep growing till those fruit are mature. And I'm going to keep going back to a tomato or to a cucumber because they're familiar for everybody. All right. You can imagine what those are and the size of those. So as we step back, are there some veggies that are just like herbs, where all we need them to do is grow leaves? Yeah, kale, lettuce. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna have all these families of things where it's like, oh, okay, that's gonna be an easy one because it's just got to grow leaves. Okay, and then you go, are there? I mean, I don't think there are any vegetables where it's like we just eat the flowers, broccoli. Okay, anyway. So as we go through this, I am going to start off with herbs. Okay, so you're going to get a mix of like my Instagram photos and my artwork and whatever. Okay, as we go through this. So herbs, now these are great choices for a container garden because they just need to grow leaves. All right, so whether you're starting them from seed or from transplants, that's all it's going to take. And you can, they're a great thing to start with. And by the way, like, look at them. Some of them are like very pretty. Just the diversity, the oregano right there is flowering. Like that's like multi-purpose right there. That's beautiful. Okay, so those are going to be easy. Here's the other thing. Why are those also easy for containers? Because many herbs are drought tolerant and we are neglectful. We all are. It's okay. We got busy lives. All right. We even if we're like some of you are retired or like me, I'm off for the summer and it's like I neglect my plants. And container garden plants that like they feel that neglect the most. So forgetting to water them maybe every day when it's hot like this. Yes, we've had rain, but it's like spotty showers. But that container, that potted plant is on, I'm going to keep going with a deck. It's on your deck, it's on your patio, because I heard a lot of people say that, and it's also common. It can't tap into the soil. It's going to have the wind going by it, wicking away moisture. It's going to have the heat beating down on it, wicking away moisture. It needs to be watered every day. Herbs are amazing in that, well, if you forget about them, they'll tend to bounce back. Okay. So you can imagine other plants though, like if you have a plant that needs to have a long life to grow big fruit, it's going to need stability for a long chunk of time. And so maybe that's not the best choice for a container. Okay. So, all right. So what else? Tomatoes. Now, so tomatoes really are a great container garden thing because they thrive in that heated environment. Decks and patios and all that stuff in the summer tend to be very hot, very warm, and tomatoes can deal with some of your neglect and bounce right back and then keep growing with it. You forget to water it for a day, it's likely not going to die in it, okay? So but with this, so yeah, these are tomatoes that I grew with my students at school in their garden. You see all the varieties there. What I would be doing if I was selecting varieties for containers, so these were all grown in raised beds, is I would be going towards some of the smaller ones and the medium-sized tomatoes. Am I saying that you can't grow large beefsteak tomatoes? Absolutely you can. You might need one of these bigger sized containers, which is going to mean more potting soil. That's going to, more expense, more, and maybe only like one plant in that. When I'm growing in a field, and I used to grow for market, I used to run a CSA, you would plant one tomato plant every 3 feet. Every 3 feet with rows 4 feet apart. That's how much room they need to pull in to be a big, thriving, successful plant. So you can imagine, on your deck, you're kind of mimicking that spacing if you want to grow really large beefsteak tomatoes. Can you get away with, but do you guys hear what I'm saying? Is like choosing different varieties where you're like, oh, okay, avoid that, go with this to set yourself up for success. And then as you get better with it, go ahead and have some experimental ones where you're like, okay, in this area, we're going to try to do that. But you were talking about raised beds. Your raised beds, those plants are going to be able to tap into, you can do bigger plants. So 3 feet. And here's the cool thing is that then you're also, well, cherry tomatoes, no, you can go closer. You could go 2 feet or so. But then you can also plant other things in there. See, that's going to be part of it is that imagine that you've got one tomato plant here. That tomato plant is going to take a while. It's going to take a couple months to grow to maturity. And this space is just not being used. So what you could do is plant something that's fast growing around here to use that space, harvest it, and then let the tomato keep growing. So like lettuces and the herbs and all those like things that are flowers, go ahead and grow some nasturtium or grow some other things. So, okay. So you're going to see a family here of tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, potatoes. All of these are part of one particular family, the nightshade family. And so they're actually all related. And the needs of peppers and eggplant, potatoes, they're all very similar to one another. The plants are different. The plants are different in their growing habits and everything. Like pepper plants are going to be smaller. Remember how I said that we'd space the tomato plants 3 feet-ish apart or so? Pepper plants, you tend to go 1 to 1.5 feet apart. So you're starting to say, oh, okay, so pepper plants, maybe like pepper plants and some of these smaller ones, individual pepper plants. Or maybe you do like 3 pepper plants in something big like this. Okay, and you let them really grow out and bush out. So yeah, we've got some variety here. Same thing. The larger the fruit, the larger the fruit, the longer that plant's going to have to live to produce that beaver dam, like, pepper, versus jalapenos and the cayennes and those like little chili peppers. Those are excellent. Habaneros, those are excellent little small peppers, because to get that small fruit, it's not going to take as long. And if you stress the plant, it's less likely that those little fruits will fail. While if you're stressing the plant because you forget to water it or whatever, you neglect it, or maybe the soil isn't ideal, it may not size up enough. So same thing with sweet peppers. There are yes, we've got bell peppers. Those are some of the biggest peppers that you can grow. I suggest that you try some of the other kinds of sweet peppers that are out there that are smaller. And yeah, some of these are like heirloom varieties, but where you might not be able to find them locally. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. All right, so we got eggplant. Again, so different varieties of eggplant are going to size. Okay, I don't even have a picture of the grocery store eggplant that's been there for like 3 weeks, but some of those thinner eggplants, those are, again, because they're smaller fruit, smaller volume. All you're hearing, do you guys hear the pattern over and over of container gardens? Think smaller. And even if you're doing a regular vegetable garden, you're going to have more success if you tend to focus on smaller growing items than some of these larger growing items. Like, hold off on the pumpkins. Hold on, like hold on, grow some other things. Start off with cucumbers, learn that, and then you can graduate to pumpkins later. Okay, but anyway, potatoes. So potatoes are actually pretty good for a container garden. They grow beneath the soil. Okay, yes, it's not like on top. And it's like, when do you harvest the potatoes? So you take the potato and you can cut them into bits and then you plant them. I tend to plant them like about 6 inches apart, 6 inches apart. And then you heap on the soil with them. If you've ever had potatoes in your cabinets, you have, and they grow eyes. Okay, yeah. Okay, those potatoes are trying to grow. That's a perfect seed potato. So here's the thing. Potatoes that don't do that from the grocery store tend to have been treated with chemicals that just hinder them from sprouting too soon. Eventually they'll sprout. But potatoes are like, you gotta make like, I just bought these and they're already starting to turn green and sprout. They're starting to have chlorophyll in. All right, anyway, those little eyes that grow out, those are not roots. Those are actually a stem. And so you can plant that underneath like 6-8 inches of soil. And because the potato is a huge seed of nutrients, that stem is going to go whoop right through the soil and up and out. And then you've buried it underneath a lot of soil. Okay, so yeah. So typically, hold it. What's that?
So if you have a potato that's grown in stems,
yep,
you can just plant that whole thing.
You can plant it whole. You can also stretch that further. I'll have a picture later on. So I don't have my order, right? But I have a potato picture with them all cut up into little bits. Okay. You basically want to make sure that each bit has an eye and has enough food in it to help it kickstart. Eventually it eats that whole thing and it withers away. The old potato withers away. But now it has leaves and it photosynthesizes and it grows new potatoes. Okay, enough about potatoes, but they're fun. And fresh potatoes, I have a cousin who comes over my house routinely every summer and is like, do you got to put some potatoes in? And I'm like, yes, David. And he knows where to look. He knows what the plants look like and he digs underneath. He'll pull a potato out and he'll eat it like an apple. Because a fresh potato doesn't have like a hard skin and it's also like a little sweeter early on. It's a young potato. It hasn't been dried out so that it doesn't rot on a grocery store shelf. Okay, but I love potatoes. Okay, you see all those little eyes? So some of the potatoes are smaller and you would just plant the whole potato, and some of them are larger and you can get multiple plantings out of that potato. Okay, so garden centers sell seed potatoes. Okay, what else? Radishes. I don't know if you know, but like radishes, that's like 30 days, you got radishes. from seed to, yeah. So if you like them, now hold it, wait, is it 30 days for all radishes? For the small radishes. If you're growing like big daikon radishes, that's a whole nother thing. Where, you know, those big daikon radishes they're delicious, but it's a bigger thing. It's going to take nearly 2 months to size up. Okay, but radishes are awesome for this. And so what you're going to see now is you're seeing patterns. We saw the tomato family of stuff. Now we're going to see the root family of stuff. There's only a few roots that go really deep that we wouldn't grow in containers. But so radishes, beets will do well in containers, shallots, onions, and garlic. Okay, you know, all the little silly watercolors of mine. Okay, folks. Carrots. So carrots, and as what we'll see later on, I'm going to save it. There's a table later on where we revisit carrots. Are all carrots a good choice for the container garden? No. Some of them not so. But all right, so what you're seeing is root vegetables are really nice because you can plant them pretty close to one another so that within like an inch or so is each individual carrot, and they'll still grow and size up. And then what does harvest time looks like? Yes, you can pull them out one by one, but you could also dump the whole container out and you got like carrots, you know, and you just watch them all be clean. Okay, so now another family of things that does well in containers is leafy vegetables. There's just a small sampling. These are the ones that I wanted to draw that day. So, okay, so we've got kales and soy. So you've got Asian greens and you've got the whole like kale leafy family. One thing that's not in here, which is I got a picture of later on, is mustard greens. I don't know if you know of mustard greens. They're amazing. You should totally grow them at home. And you've got like, yeah, different types of lettuces. So one note on lettuces. Again, there's different types of lettuces. Imagine you go to the grocery store. You got that iceberg lettuce. That's dense, isn't it? That is a big fruit. It's not a fruit. I know it's not a fruit, but you know what I mean. It's the analogy. That's a big, dense thing that's meant to be grown in fields. Okay, what does well in containers are these loose leaf varieties. So when you're looking at different varieties of avoid, mesclun is a number one, because mesclun just means you grow it till it's small and then you cut it. Okay, that's mesclun. Mesclun is literally, kale is in mesclun, and like all of these could be in a mesclun mix. Mesclun is where you're going over here and you're fairy dusting the seed on, and then you just like tap it in, maybe sprinkle a little soil on, not a lot because they're small seeds. You don't want to bury them. And you water them and you walk away and you let the little seedlings pop up, and then you devour and eat the seedlings. You just don't let them grow to maturity. That's what mesclun is. Fancy, huh? It's just young plants. It's baby plants, baby lettuces and baby kales and all that. And so fancy mesclun mix is just going to have different variety. Go to the grocery store and you don't have to buy the mesclun, but go ahead and just look at the mesclun that's there. It'd be like, oh, that's a red leaf lettuce. That's a green leaf lettuce. That's done. Okay. So, okay. So leafy stuff. Okay. Beans and peas and stuff like that, they do well. Now here's where I've got my own bias. I like to go out and harvest a heck of a lot of beans when I go out and harvest. I like to have like 20, 30 feet of bean plants that I'm harvesting. So I'm personally not going to grow them in containers, but because growing bean plants in here, you'll have them planted every 1 or 2 inches, and those plants are like, they'll what's the word? They'll flow out like, flower arrangements and stuff like that. They'll flow out of the container, which is fine, and you'll get enough to harvest from them for some meals. But for me, I like to freeze them, and I like lots of beans. So I'm going to grow them in my garden. But again, there's still small little veggies, small fruits that you're eating. And then, so I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? On your backyard deck, you could grow everything to make like pickles, to make pickles. So you can grow the cucumbers. Those are little pickling cukes, and grow those. Now, see, with cucumbers, there tend to be bush varieties. So if you don't know this, there tends to be a bush variety. And what does that mean? It means it doesn't mean it like grows a tree. It's like, it means that it's compact. All right. And then there's vining ones where they grow out. It doesn't matter which ones you grow, but if you grow the vining ones, well, maybe put those near your deck rail so that as they grow, you can kind of like let them drape over your deck rail and add some extra height. And here's the cool thing is that if you're giving them that extra height, you're giving them more surface area to photosynthesize, and you're letting them be more successful in producing food for themselves. So you could grow jalapenos. So this is my recipe for pickles. So, but I teach that class too. Okay. So a red onion, some garlic, some dill, not a lot, a little bit dill. So, and some cucumbers and jalapenos. Those all right. I'm not the biggest fan of jalapenos, but I do like them. But like pickled jalapenos are a whole different thing. They're amazing, and they don't add like a ton of heat to anything. They add an amazing flavor. Okay, anyway, pickles. I love pickles. So, and that's mustard greens. This is several different varieties. Let's see. We genuinely have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different varieties of mustard greens. What does that have to do to be successful? Just like lettuce and all those, it just has to grow leaves. Do you have to harvest them when they're a foot long? No, you can harvest them when they're smaller. You can take a leaf or two off of each plant, chop them up, cook them, put them in the omelet, and then let the rest of the plant grow. These were harvested where I just grabbed the whole plant and cut the whole thing. Will the plant bounce back from an intense harvest like that? Probably not. It could. So, all right. Any questions? I can keep talking. I'm gonna keep talking. We're like a bit through. Go. Oh, generally they're way more accepting of each other than we are. So yeah. So here's the thing. If they have enough space, there's no issues with one thing growing right next to another. Okay. What I would say what you'll have if you, okay, I've had this problem when I'm growing things is that instead of like one tomato plant in here, I might be like, I'm gonna put 4 in here. What happens is they compete for sunlight. So those tomato plants, instead of growing out and growing bushy and collecting all the sunlight, they grow out and then they meet their neighbor and then they're like, hey, we need light. You're in my way. And they grow up instead of out. So same thing with mesclun. Remember when I was talking about mesclun, it's just baby lettuces. When you plant them so close, if you were to let them grow to full mature plants, they're planted too darn close to become a full lettuce plant, which by the full lettuce plant is going to be like, it's like this big. Okay. Whether it's leaf lettuce or so a lot of the problems are that people space things too close because we get all these seeds in a packet, or we get all of these plants in our 6 packs of transplants, or we just like go to the garden center and we buy too many things. So yeah. There was a question back here or no? Or, yeah. To intersow. Okay, to intersow is planting things in between other plants. That's exactly, yeah. So that would be maybe I plan things out and I'm like, all right. I heard from him that some small things like radishes, those are fast, and lettuces, small mesclun can be fast. And it's going to take a long time. I'm going to come back to that tomato or that cucumber, whatever. It's going to take a long time for those to grow. So I'm going to plant the cucumber plant. I'm going to plant the squash plant. I'm going to plant the tomato plant here, but it's not going to get that big soon. So I'm going to plant some small, quick growing things in between. So you can have multiple things in one pot. But then again, it's like trying not to grow too many things in one pot. All right. Things to avoid. You've already heard some of the reasons why, but I like to include this because you start to hear some of the other, I use the word avoid because they're not necessarily impossible. It's just not the best choice. And I want to set you up for success. All right. I want you to be able to be like, oh, I will, all the things that I already mentioned, you're going to tend to have success with like all of these things, all of these tend to be very successful if you've got, your other variables dialed in. But if you choose these next plants, they are likely not going to do well. in a container or in a small space. Okay, and the first one is corn. By the way, this one's not my art. This is artificial intelligence. You know, this is DALL-E. This is yeah. Okay, so I reached out. I was like, I need a permission-free picture of corn. Give me pictures of corn. Okay, and so all right, why is corn a bad choice? Think about where it's normally grown. Corn tends to be grown in fields because it's air pollinated. Okay, you've got the silks at the bottom where when you're peeling corn, you got the silks coming out of each corn cup. Each one of those silks goes to each kernel. I don't know if you know that. So so you've got the whole corn. You've bought corn and you open up, you're like, oh man, it's like only halfway developed. And what that means is that corn some of the silks did not get pollinated, therefore they didn't create little seeds that you would eat. So the tassels at the top have the pollen that then floats down, with the air and everything floats down onto each of the silks. So where did that corn come from? It came from the edge of the field that might have been like on like the leeward side. It might have been on the calm side of the field that didn't get as much wind, blah, 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 blah. Corn is meant to be grown in acres. Or at least in a dense block. It's not going to do well. Can you hand pollinate corn? Yes. That's where it comes down to. It's something that's advanced. If you want to go down the road of having 5 corn plants and you hand pollinate those, have fun. Okay. Okay, what's that? That's supposed to be melons. You know it. Why are melons a poor choice? Huge fruit. Even the small melons. Think of the smallest melon you've ever seen. That's still so much bigger than a beefsteak tomato. Right? Okay. And so when I'm planting melons in a field, I'm putting 1 melon plant every 10 feet. Yeah. And then we get to our friend, the pumpkin. I don't know if you've ever been to a pumpkin field and if you've ever picked pumpkins and gone to a field and picked pumpkins, it's this whole mess of vines going everywhere because the whole field needs to become a set of solar panels to make sugars to pack in and create pumpkins. And so why are pumpkins a poor choice? Not just because they're big, but because they're going to go way outside their boundaries. The vines on a thriving pumpkin plant or a gourd or a melon plant, where we got gourds and melon plants, those vines are going to go 15, 20 feet out from the center. So from where the plant is. And I don't know if you know this, but the vines will grow out and somewhere along the vine, it'll grow roots to tap in. And it'll have roots here and here and here and here and here to pull in more moisture than the main plant could have. Okay, so do we get the point as to why? Well, I do. I've had people come and I talked to them nobody here mentioned it. It's okay. But I have had people be like, oh, I'm trying to grow some melons on my deck. Okay. and so now you kind of know the reasons why, and it's okay. And so squash and zucchini, again, those tend to be bigger plants. These are kind of borderline. They can be easy for some people. They can be hard for others. So I put them in the category of like, hold off on it till later. Hold off on squash or zucchini until maybe you've grown some like cucumbers and tomatoes and all those others. Gourds, again, huge. Sweet potatoes are different than potatoes. So sweet potatoes are they are not in the same family as potatoes. Yams, yeah. So point being is the growing behavior of a sweet potato is it's not related to pumpkins, but it's more like a pumpkin in that it vines out and it needs to tap in with those vines into the soil to pull in nutrients from this huge 20-foot radius to create the sweet potato patch. So you see why this is like a poor choice and so why did I put this here? Because we hear the word potato, potato, potato. And now you know sweet potatoes are different than potatoes. That's all. Okay. Cabbage. Okay. It is a leafy thing, but it's a dense leafy thing. So just like you would avoid head varieties of lettuces, like a romaine headed lettuce or you would avoid things like cabbage because it's going to be Cabbage is notoriously drought intolerant. Yes? Get like lactose intolerant, drought intolerant. Okay. So we're phrasing things the right way. So remember that we're going to be neglectful, not on purpose. It's just going to happen. You're going to forget to water your things. Broccoli, you'll see that some people love to grow them in containers. I'd say it's more of an advanced one because it's also what's the word? It's drought intolerant. It likes to have consistent moisture, and these are also heavy feeders. They'll need really the soil dialed in. Why leeks are here? Leeks grow way too deep for this. Leeks are actually ones that you grow them and then you actually hill up soil around them to blanch and to make that big white part that you eat. And could you do that in a container? Yeah, but it's just like you'd constantly be adding soil on top and soil on top. But no, because the leeks actually have roots that go down even deeper as well as that. So it's like way too deep for this. And then I do have friends who grow fruit trees in containers. And every year they bring the containers into their house and they store them away for the winter. And some of you have these friends too, where they're like, okay, we're going to put the fig tree out. We're going to put the lemon tree out. We got the coffee tree or the whatever. And then like 5 years go by and they get, I've got a lime. And it's just like, okay, I'm not discouraging you from having your long-term relationship that that feeds you only. Yeah, okay. Save it for that's an advanced thing. It's an advanced thing. And a lot of the fruit trees, like a fig or a lime or a lemon, they're all going to tend to be trees that need cold weather protection. That's advanced. That's beyond this class. Yes, you can do it, but it's beyond this class. You had a question or no? Yeah. Every year they take it out, they bury it, and then they repot it. Absolutely. But that's advanced. Good for them. How long has it been living? Yeah, older than some family members. Yeah. Okay, good. Asparagus. So here's why I'm putting this here, because some of the slides that are going to come up, these are slides that I found from the internet where I'm like, oh, these are kind of neat infographics. But wait, why is asparagus on there? I think this is a poor choice to grow in containers. Again, big root system. I'm not even getting, asparagus is a perennial. You're not hearing me really advocate for many perennial things. Can you keep lavender forever in a potted plant? Absolutely. Like that lavender, beautiful. I like some of my favorite things to keep in containers are like my lavender and my sage and my oregano. Those are perennial herbs that come back year after year after year. Mint, don't put mint in your garden, put it in a container. So yeah, or else it's going to be in your garden forever. Okay. Time check. We're doing well. If you're thinking of, so here's the thing. These are advanced. Strawberries, they're not that advanced, but if you're thinking of the dwarf fruit trees, I do want to point you in the direction of some awesome suppliers. You look at these slides later on. These are great places. Norse is where I love to get my, so some of you, if you like this class, then you might like to start an orchard in your backyard. These are great places to go for orchard fruit, where you could have a little raspberry patch. Norse is awesome. And Stark Brothers, and it's all about knowing your hardiness zone map. That's not really what this class is, but it's like an Amazon thing. If you like this class, you might like that. So there we go. So, and strawberries do well in containers. I think I got a picture later on with some. We are still on choosing plants. Now I'm going to rush through. So here's the thing. I would hope that you're thinking kind of holistically now. You're thinking of, so when you're looking at seeds or when you're looking at plants, I didn't even ask one of the questions I love to ask, which is like, what are the names of your garden centers here? You probably have a Lowe's or a Home Depot. Yeah, but what are your local ones? What's that? Nature. Okay, we're all echoing. This is good because there's likely some people in here I don't know them. I'm not going to write them down, but there are some people here who might like be on their phone, be like, oh, okay. Like, and like just buying plants, buying seeds from your local suppliers is a great thing to do. They can answer questions and everything. So what we're going to get into is looking at some of the best ways to plant in containers. And so like right off the bat, easiest way to plant in a container Is that me or somebody? I don't know. Okay, it's my daughter's friends. Okay, I silenced it, but yeah, go for it.
They're growing butterfly
Yeah,
in a pot.
okay.
It's doing beautifully. So that's.
And it's a perennial?
Right,
Yeah.
but can we leave that pot? Because I'm used to growing in the land. Can you leave it in the winter in the pot?
So I do definitely focus a lot on veggies and everything. And so as we get into perennial flowers, and we think about having those in pots, yes. Sometimes what you're going, it's not necessarily part of the presentation. So I'm gonna talk to it right now. So if you really want to, like, with many perennial plants, they grow deep root systems if you can put them in the ground. And those root systems and the hardy barkiness of them help them store sugars that they can revive themselves every spring. A plant that's in a pot tends to get dried out faster in the winter. You know when our soils are like frozen over, they're like frozen with water. They're not like frozen and dried out. So one of the biggest things is those roots get dried out and the whole thing gets stunted. So it's like, no, it's like what can we do? Maybe you gather all of those pots and you put straw or hay or some kind of mulch over the whole thing so that they get protected from that. It's like you see people who put burlap over their roses and stuff like that, or over their, you know what I mean? It's a different landscaping, boxwoods comes to mind. So why do they put burlap and stuff? It's really to protect those plants from the wind, because the wind is like one of the harshest things. So yeah, so it all comes down to experimentation. You'll find your favorites where you're like, I'm not frustrated with these do well in pots, and you're like, I could never get these to work in pots, and time shows you that. That's good. All right. Okay, so best way, I'm gonna say it, best way to plant in containers is that somebody else has the plant growing at the garden center. You go down to the garden center, you buy the plant, and then you put it in the container. You pot it up. So in the gardening world, that's called potting up. You're taking the 6-pack of plants and you're potting it up into its final home. What's that? Its forever home. Okay. So I am going to talk about soil blocks, because I don't know if some of you are here like part of a garden club, or if you're just like me and you want to avoid plastic stuff and you want to like grow with soil blocks. It's awesome. All right, so I'm an evangelist for it. Drilling just means you drill your finger in and you put the seed in. So like, yeah, are you going to like buy transplants of beans and peas and stuff like that? No, you're going to stick your finger in the soil and you're going to pop the seed in and you're going to cover it. And then you just keep doing that, drill. So drilling, there's not much to talk about with that. And direct seeding is just like seeding and then covering the seeds. So you're not drilling down with a big seed. General rule is, if you open up the seed pack, the larger the seed, the further down you can plant it, because it has more energy to sprout and germinate and get through all that soil to the sunlight. So every little seed has like a little backpack of food inside of that seed. I know, I taught like middle schoolers, right? We would all gather around in a circle and I'd be like, okay, everybody pretend you're like a little seedling. And we crouch down on the ground. I'm not going to make you do it, and I'm not going to do it. But my point is that small seeds, some seeds are so small, they're like dust. And you like, oh, they're gone. Yeah. So like chamomile and like oregano, a lot of herb and a lot of flower seeds, so small that they're like dust. If you plant those seeds and you plant them under like a thick layer of soil, thick, like an inch, that's too much. Some seeds, you only want a dusting of soil on top. And why a dusting? Just so when the wind comes by, it doesn't pull moisture from that young little seedling. Because remember, like you were all in kindergarten, and I'm sure you grew like seedlings, or you have family members who grew seedlings in little milk cartons. All right, it was like to activate the seed, you needed water. And yes, you needed sunlight, but the sunlight's secondary. You primarily need moisture to trigger the germination. So, okay, easiest way to grow is transplants. So thinking about this, part of choosing the right plants, also location. You might want to do something like this, what is this? This is looking at your yard and saying, where are the parts of the yard that are like that are shady too often? Looking at shade patterns in your yard. So container gardening, we actually really start to think about this, because you probably have containers around your yard. and thinking of like, I want to grow stuff here, but maybe that spot is too shady, or maybe you're trying to grow impatiens that love shade and you're putting them directly in the sunny spot all the time. You're setting them up for failure. So thinking about that, that's the cool thing about containers. You can try it here, and then like a month from now, you could be like, I think it needs more sun. I think it needs less sun. I think it needs to be closer to the building where it gets a wind buffer and doesn't get hit by the wind so much. You got all these microclimates that you can mess around with. This is talking about the hours of daylight that the plant needs to be successful. Remember, you can look at this later in detail when we email you the presentation. But if you look at what's the pattern of all of these things that just need a little bit of sunlight, they're all leafy things. As you get to things that have bigger needs, they're going to need more hours of sunlight. So when you think about your own area, I want you to think choosing plants also comes down to, all right, be honest with yourself. Are you in complete shade? If you're in complete shade all day long, and you got trees growing all the way over your house, you can't find a sunny spot, you're going to be successful, you're going to not grow tomatoes, because tomatoes do need direct sun. They need a lot of sunlight. And so for me, I know I'm like I'm blessed with, my house is in the middle of a field. And so it's all sun. So for me, I focus on those high sunlight plants. And then once they're bigger, I think about planting some of the low sunlight things behind them on the north side so that they kind of naturally shade them. Okay, so we got these are all like different things to think about. Okay, so seeds germinate. Oh, the potato thing. Remember I said I would show you the purple potatoes? We plant, my kiddo and I planted these. So you can kind of see right here. This was one potato that we were like, we could cut that in half. We cut it in half and made sure that each part had some like little eyes on it to grow. And you're literally just like put it in the soil and mound it up with like 6 inches of soil on top. And some of them didn't get cut because they were on the small side. So yeah, potatoes are pretty easy. Soil blocks. So transplants like this. Okay, so vocabulary, transplants, some people call them starts, kind of depends on like where you are in the country and stuff like that. Grown in little 6-packs like that, or 4-packs. That's a very common way to find plants, and you pop each one out and then you give them more space. You can, if you want to start seeds yourself, you can start them in soil blocks. I love it. This is what soil blocks are. You have a little tool like this, that's a little soil blocker. It's a little metal tool. I think they're somewhere around like $30, $40, and the tool's like gonna last like forever. And you press out little clumps of potting soil. All right. So like it's not that hard, and then you put the seeds in each one, and so I think, oh yeah, this is like me when I'm growing seedlings. I tend to grow a lot of stuff. And so that's like the before, and this is like the after. It's like they do well in soil blocks. And then those like little blocks, they kind of like meld together, but they'll still break apart. The roots kind of grow to the end and they air prune. I'm not going to get into like the nitty gritty of it. But soil blocks are, the soil that I use in my mix, the mixture that I make is the same mixture that I would recommend that you make for your pots. So we come back to that later on. And what I want you to hear is that like the formula that I give you, and that's probably in the handout and everything, that formula of like, okay, buy these ingredients, mix them together, you're going to have a great start. Works for soil blocks and also works for containers. So we'll get there. So transplants. Okay. Remember I said we come back to carrots? This is the root depth of different types of plants. So this is like how deep down will they want to grow their roots. And when you look at some of them, it's like 2 to 3 feet deep. That's some of these plants, like you're seeing like, watermelon, tomatoes are there, but like you're seeing some of the plants, the pumpkins and things that we already said to avoid, it's because they have deep root systems. And when we get to carrots right here, 18 to 24 inches. So there's so many different types of carrots. I know when you buy baby carrots at the store, they're baby cut carrots. Did you ever notice I had the word cut there? Because they're basically carrots that have been cut. You know it because you've gotten the one, you're like, this was a carrot. I know it was. And so there is such a thing as like baby carrots, but it doesn't make sense for the farmers to grow those. It makes sense for them to invest in growing larger carrots and then cut them to smaller sizes and then you nom them. So a full-sized carrot, you know, when you buy the bag of carrots kind of thing, that standard size carrot, you can buy smaller varieties. But the first thing a carrot seedling does when it germinates is it drops down this taproot. And that taproot grows like twice the length of the carrot itself. So if you're growing a carrot that's this big, its taproot is going to be deeper than that. So if you ever want to create carrots that are the little people carrots that you see on Instagram, okay, this is how you do it. You take the little like 6-pack things and you fill them with soil. You remember like or the soil blocks that I had, and you plant the seed and you just let it start in there. Then you transplant it out. And the little taproot hits the bottom of the plastic or the bottom of the board or whatever. And then it starts to do all these funky growing legs and appendages and all these weird things. But it also results in smaller carrots. So you get this trade-off. So here's the thing. Carrots, when I'm looking at these containers, I'm not really necessarily looking at volume. I'm looking at the depth. So I would avoid some of the smaller ones. So the same thing, we're going to look at tons of different types of containers, metal ones and plastic ones and wooden ones. And when we're looking at some things that have deep roots, we're going to want to put them in deep rooted things. But then we look at some things that are smaller, like, well, all right, blah, blah, blah. I can talk forever, so I have to move myself on. There are so many guides that are like this that help you start off in the right way. Plants that are best started from seed versus plants that are best started from transplant. Now that could be that you start it from seed and start the transplant, but then you take the transplant and put it in the container, or you just buy the tomato plant from the store. Okay. But when you look at it, now are all of these good plants for container gardens? No, this as a teacher, we are synthesizing information now. We're taking information from this source and from this source, and we're geeking out. All right. And we're like, I want to grow carrots. Okay. Carrots are best grown from seed, but they're going to be deep. And the carrot packet says I plant them an inch apart, and you synthesize all that information and you pay attention to the details and you'll have good carrots. Okay. Synthesize information. All right. This is where I come back to the Square Foot Gardening book. This is a picture right from it, where it shows you, I don't know if you know. I want you to ask yourself in your head, do you know when the last frost is in your area? It's about the same for me. I'm in Colchester. For me, it's like first-ish week of May. But then this year, we got like a freeze the second week of May. And it like, all right, anyway, I got to get over it. But look at the 0. You see the number 0 in the middle? So that number 0 that's right here, that is when your last frost is. So somebody can pick up this book, and they can be in New Hampshire, they could be in Connecticut, they could be in Oregon. And they pay attention to when's our typical last frost? Ask a neighbor, ask whatever, ask me. It tends to be first or second week of May. Okay. And if we're up in Massachusetts, it tends to be third week of May when I teach up there. So this tells me, okay, when is the best time to plant cucumbers? And should I plant them as transplants or should I plant them as seeds? I want you to see eggplant right here. It's saying, don't plant it as a seed. Seed's not even like an option. This is synthesizing the information from this and putting it in this cool infographic that also combines with when should I plant it. Remember that I say like I curate resources? This is me curating resources to help you set up for success. You want to grow eggplants. You now know that you're going to, in a container, you're going to start off with the thin eggplants. So those smaller fruit, you're going to be like, I want to grow them as seedlings. Do I want to do that on my own? No, I'm going to go to a garden center. I'm only going to be looking for the thin eggplants. I am not going to buy the big eggplants. I'm going to look for the thin ones. And if I don't see them, I'm not going to buy the big ones because I'm setting myself up for failure. Or you experiment and you buy the big ones. So, but point is, or you're like, I want to try that soil block thing. I got the soil and everything that I'm going to make for this. Let me go buy the blocker. Let me start the seedlings in the house and also learn how to grow eggplants from seed. And then you get the pride of doing that. Eggplants are they're a pain in the butt to grow from seed. Eggplants are like the one that I still like. I'll try it every now and then I hate them because I'll get like a 30% success rate. They're horrible. So, and even the pros, the commercial folks, they have about a 50% success rate. While a tomato plant, they'll get 90, 95% success rate with every single seed. Yeah. Yeah, the soil blocker. Yep. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So pros and cons with everything. Yeah. If you've got it and you saved it, go ahead. No problem with that. Some people don't. And there is the risk. So you should clean it out. You know it. I don't have to tell you, wash it. Yeah. Yeah. But not everybody knows it. So we'll tell them. You got to wash them first. Yep. There you go. You got it. You got it. And then you can reuse them over and over. And if you leave them out in the sun all summer long, that plastic's going to get brittle. You won't get to reuse it over and over. So if you want to reuse them over and over and be a steward in that way of reusing resources, keep them out of daylight. Okay, move on. Okay, so the right container, we're finally there. Okay, so now we get to some size matters and thinking about spacing can matter. This is where the square foot garden, this book was not written for container gardens. It's the square foot gardener. And so you look at this and they're saying, hey, about every foot you could, in that garden, you could grow. So this is based on a 4 foot by 4 foot raised bed. And it helps you with spacing. And what I really like is that you can imagine taking that spacing and going looking at this and going, well, this is about a foot by a foot. I could put, I could put 9 plants in this of that type. You guys get it. It's the curated resources. Stuff like this can be helpful. And these are just different themed gardens. Are all of these great for containers? No, we already talked about like cauliflower is like broccoli. It's not going to do well in a container. We move on. Okay. So I found some of these infographics. These are good, but then you're going to see how I'm teaching this class in Connecticut and I've grown in Connecticut for years. Some of you have grown in Connecticut longer than that. You know what does well in your area. So I am teaching about what I know does well in our area and what I know does well in containers. Some other people make charts like this, and they're going to put broccoli and Brussels sprouts and cabbage and cauliflower in here. And I wouldn't, because these should be grown in the ground because they're such heavy feeders. Do you guys get my point? These were not on my list earlier, but they're now here. This is the whole synthesizing information part. You're like, hold it, wait, don't get confused by this. When you look at this later and you forget the class, just remember, this is not, you don't have my blessing to grow these things in containers because they're not set up for success. But something like this can help you go, oh, I want to grow radishes. What could I start out with? 3 gallon. Do you guys get where this is the quick answers? All right, or quick answers of what you could grow in each type of container. So we got this. Okay, now let's move on. Here's also, I'm going to leave you with these infographics that go all the way up to the 20 gallon thing down to a little 2 or 3 gallon container. And then this gives you ideas of things, big things that you could grow and stuff. Tomatoes in that like 10 gallon. I said earlier, I'd go 7 gallon would be the smallest I'd go. And I agree with them. I would ideally put it in a 10 gallon container. Sweet. Do you see how sweet potatoes are here? Again, I know that we're in Connecticut and whoever made this, we're the growingthegarden.com, they are probably not in Connecticut. I know that the growing season for sweet potatoes is hard to pull off in Connecticut because I've done it. You can do it, but it's going to be tough. And so again, infographics like this are great. It's that whole like, hey, just because you can find it online doesn't mean it's the right answer for your area. So you've already got my top 10s. You've already got my top 10s and my things to avoid. So we move on. I'm gonna move on. This idea of going vertical with stuff. Okay, so now we get into different types of actual materials. So these grow bags, some of you, like I keep pointing to these because they give us a sense of scale, but now I'm pointing to them because, well, what the heck are they? Okay, so these growing bags are pretty awesome in that, all right, so this is an advertisement. These are not my words, but they do allow for oxygen to get to the roots. That they do allow for air to get here to the roots to breathe. They do allow when you have, oh, we've had some heavy rain. We have had heavy rain, yes. Okay, imagine that this fills up with water, and that water could just sit here if it doesn't have enough drainage. Those roots will rot. That's it. What are you going to do? You're going to tip the thing on the side and try to drain off the water? It's already sopping wet. A container like this will let excess moisture out. Now, it will dry out a little more, so it does mean that you need to water it. So pictures of what stuff looks like in these pots that you can actually literally like crisscross and slice into these as well to plant things on the edges, like those strawberries. Okay, herbs, we got carrots, onions, okay, we got potatoes. So I put this up here because I've heard mixed reviews of these. So this is like your own experiment. I grow potatoes in my garden, not in containers, but I have a friend, John, who was growing with these, and their friend who's in Long Island and does container gardens there and everything had great luck with it. And John bought like these cheap bags like this, and the Velcro kept coming undone and the soil would just spill out every time you get a heavy rain. So I don't know. So I think it's like a don't buy the cheap stuff kind of thing. If you're going to buy stuff like this, by the way, great for flowers and herbs. These are little pockets. Okay, these are going to dry out pretty easily, but they're also going to be like easy to water. Just water the top and let it cascade down. Okay, that's pretty easy. When I look at this, it's got like these like little loops at the top. So what you're hearing now is the what am I thinking as somebody who grows a lot of stuff. And I want to avoid problems. Those loops at the top will not be able to hold all that weight. So that's where I'm looking at the grommets that are here. This had better be screwed into whatever surface it's on. If you just hang it, eventually there's going to be a time in the summer where the whole thing falls down and you're going to be like all like upset and like, yeah, okay. Stuff like this, yeah, great. These are cool little containers. The one thing is that this could be prone if it's stacked too high or if it's in a windy area, the whole thing could tip over. Okay, and then again, you got all your plants all over the place, but that's a neat way of growing strawberries. You'll see those. So when you're looking, here's the thing. Now you start going online, and you start searching for this stuff, you're going to see ads for all of these different things. This is the part of the class where it's like, okay, which ones might you avoid and which ones might you think, okay, these are great. These are great. So I don't know if you've ever seen these, they go on your deck. So now what you're going to get into is the part of the class where I was like, hey, what's on Facebook Marketplace? And so, and I'm looking locally, what's available? What are people selling? These are awesome. These are the deck rail things. So again, small, you got shallow roots. So this is going to be for smaller types of flowers and herbs, maybe lettuces, maybe radishes, but you're not growing tomatoes in this. You know it. Now that you have this class, you're not going to try to do anything like that in these little deck rail, but that's an awesome thing. What I would do is, again, wind. I wouldn't want it to topple over. I would put a screw here and here and screw it into the deck rail somehow. Like that's personally, literally what I've done. Yeah, what's your question? Yes. Mm-hmm. Generally, if you're cleaning out the whole container, you want to reuse the whole container, and you're switching over the garden soil and putting in new, or you're composting the old soil, putting in new. We're also going to talk about like keeping the soil in and growing in the soil again, like you would in your garden. We might as well talk about it now. So there can be soil-borne diseases. Tomato plant, I keep coming back to tomatoes because they're popular, but tomato plants tend to have different viruses that get embedded in the soil, and that if you grow tomatoes in that soil again, you're growing it in the soil and putting the virus right next to the plant, and then you get a stunted plant. So if you want to keep growing the same type of thing you should grow it in a different container each year, except for perennials, that's a whole different thing. We talked about perennials, but if you want to grow like flowers or herbs, or there's a lot of different soil-borne things. And so what my suggestion with annual stuff is to rotate through and kind of keep track of what was growing in what and grow different things in them, or maybe have a year off where you don't grow something. Okay, so another thing could be to completely replace the soil. And so now if you've got the whole container and it's empty, why not give it a quick little washout with like a little bit of bleach and water, a bleach water solution. You look on the bottle of bleach, it's like like a tablespoon of bleach for a gallon of water kind of thing, and do a little wash down like that. You don't even have to go the soap route, just a quick look. See, that's it. So yep, wood is going to be its own weird porous thing. Yeah, so you're going to get pros and cons. Go. It's what you've got. No. You rotate what you grow in them. So you remember, make a little map that you grew tomatoes here. Next year, grow them over here. Next year, grow them over here. Next year, and then maybe after 4 years, you're back to the same spot. That's it. I don't have it with me, but I have my garden journal. My garden journal has the where I grew things. And all I do is I have 4 spots and I rotate what was growing here to that spot. Next year, then next year, that spot. And after 4 years, it's back to the new spot in the same soil. So one thing with containers that you are going to be doing is, if you are reusing the same soil, typically adding new compost every year, adding something like that. I want to speed on through. Okay, so we're gonna speed on through. So we got containers like this. This is a self-watering container. So you pour water in that, and so this is meant to be indoors, because if it's outdoors and you get rain, it's going to fill up with water and it won't be able to drain it out unless you drill some drain holes and stuff. So again, old pots like this, yes, wash them, but like stuff like this is available, and you can get some big nursery pots. Instead of stuff like this, you can get big nursery pots that used to have trees growing in them. There you go, and kind of sterilize them in between. We already talked about stuff like that. Okay, so wood. If it's something, so a wooden planter like this, it's got to pass a couple tests with me, which is, would I be comfortable laying down in that and wiggling around? That I'm not, you know what I mean, or you don't know what I mean. I have to explain it. What I mean is, if I put my body weight in there, that's going to be like similar to it being filled with sopping wet soil after rain. And will that be sturdy enough to hold my weight? Will it be sturdy enough to, because again, you don't want the whole thing falling down. So again, with wooden structures, you're going to constantly be like looking at, is it built right? This is one from Tractor Supply. And I was like looking at it, it's got this metal frame. It's $200, but when I looked at it, I was like, this would pass. This would pass for me. It's all right. So we got drainage built into these. When I look at that, I like how it's tiered. That's kind of cool, but the legs look a little rickety. I'm not sure. So again, you're just hearing me talk out loud with this. We get into some metal containers. Absolutely. Metal can be a great container to use, but they have no drainage in the bottom. So why not buy from some like old farm, like their old containers that have rusty bottoms already that have holes? Why drill holes in these? So, but that's a permanent thing that you're going to do. Tractor Supply again had these, and I was like, huh, these are kind of cool. And they have a drainage thing right down the middle. I didn't take a picture of it. Again, pricey, spendy, but that's a decent solution. And what you'll notice is that these are deep. These are like a foot or more deep. So they have a lot of volume inside. Okay, same thing with that. That one kind of passed my inspection. I looked at this and so I'm from Canterbury, Connecticut. It's like cow town and farmland. And I'm like, yeah, that's something I would have built as a kid. No, I don't have any problems with it. I look at it and just want to make sure that those buckets have holes drilled underneath. Same thing with that. So we got people selling stuff like this ready to go. Those are pre-filled. Plastic can be okay. Big containers like this, you can grow in. You could cut the whole thing in half, flip it upside down, and you've got like a growing container. But then again, build in drainage. You don't want the whole thing to fill up with water. You got to drill lots of holes in the bottom. And you could even drill like big holes, like an inch big. Then you got a container like this. This is where I start to get skeptical, because look at like how they're using these and growing. I look at this and I'm like, who wants a tower of lettuce that's all going to harvest at one time? This is like weird advertisement, $125 for this container. This is like what it looked like. It's cool. When I look at this, I see that barrel and I'm like, why are they growing lettuce in it? Lettuce has small roots and you have so much wasted soil in there. Even if you grew a tomato in there, it's not going to go all the way to the bottom and use all that up. The better use for that is cut it in half, split it apart, and plant some big items in that. But okay, so you're hearing me talk out loud with this. Okay, so now we're at the home stretch here. These things, why are these at the end? It's because a lot of the stuff with choosing the plants is what I want you to hear. It's the fun part. It's the fun part of choosing and planning your garden and designing your like little space and imagining, okay, the tomato's going to get this big and I'm going to have another container here and here. I'm going to put, that's the fun part. This really, it can be formulaic, can be a formula that you follow. Okay, so going to a garden center, remember I said that the soil that we're using in these containers, it's not going and digging dirt from the ground and putting it in, because the soil that's in your garden has all sorts of stuff living in it. It has fungal networks in it. Little pockets of bacterias and fungi and yeast that are getting eaten by earthworms that are freely traveling in all of these little tunnels, and all of these like little sow bugs and all sorts of living things that are breaking down what once was alive in that soil. If we put it in a container, those living things aren't going to have enough volume to like really keep them alive for years. This becomes something that's relatively can you keep an earthworm population in here? Yes, for some time, but not in those smaller ones. It's going to die out. So we're not relying on natural things to break down organic matter and make it bioavailable to the plants. We are going to put in stuff like compost that has already been broken down, already digested, and now has nutrients available for the roots of your plant to pull in. And here's the thing, could you fill the whole thing with compost and grow in just compost? Absolutely, but if you're buying it, it's going to get expensive. So what we do is we water it down with some other potting soils. So what you're not hearing me say is you're hearing me not say topsoil, and I'm not saying like peat moss. I'm saying potting soil, potting mixes. That's the vocab that you want to burn in your head. Or you can find bags that are container garden bags, container garden mixes. Those are pre-made, ready to go. I like to make mine in mass, in a big wheelbarrow, mix it all up and be ready to go. You could use a fertilizer like that is complete, meaning it's got your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your NPK ready to go in that. And so I'd take like a cup full of that and mix it in with a big container like this. That would be about it. So you could add that in on top of the mix. I personally have gotten into mixing 3 main ingredients together: green sand, rock phosphate, and blood meal together. Blood meal is a byproduct of the slaughtering industry. When we slaughter the animals, there's blood and they dry it out and you can use it. It gives you the nitrogen that you would need. The same thing that's in this. So in this one, you'll have things like bone meals, bones, ground up, and feather meals from the poultry industry. Feathers that are all ground up. Those are high in nitrogen. And that's what makes them organic, is that it's not oil that's pumped out of the ground and processed into petrochemical fertilizers like Miracle-Gro. Miracle-Gro is petrochemical fertilizers. So I'm promoting the use of other things, okay? And yes, that means, in a way, supporting the slaughtering of animals and all that jazz, okay? So it's not vegan, but it is organic. It's different, okay? Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's my stance on that. I mix my stuff together. And so compost, yes. Peat moss on its own is a no-no because it tends to be acidic, but many potting mixes do have peat moss in them, like this Lambert mix. you see, so it says a professional growing media all-purpose mix. That's what we're looking for. Pro mix like this is a good one. So these are big bales. This is a lot of volume. So $40 for a bag. And then when you bring it home, you cut open the bag and mix it all together. It gets even bigger, because you then aerate it and everything. And so what is this you can look at later. That's in words. This is that in pictures. In order, I get out something to mix everything in, could be a wheelbarrow, or this is like a masonry, when I did my tile, that's what I mixed stuff in. And you see my soil blockers there. I'm getting ready to make soil blocks, but it's the same mix that I use for containers. And so that is, now it's not 1, 2, 3, 4 bags. It's 4 parts. Okay, 4 parts of this, 1 part of compost. Okay, now could you stretch it and do 6 or 8 parts of that mix and 1 part compost? Yeah, you probably could, but you're going to dilute your soil down with nutrients. So if you're growing vegetables, so if you're growing flowers, you could add more of that potting mix and less compost. If you're growing herbs, you could add more of that and less compost. But if you're growing vegetables, you want to stick to this 4 parts, 1 part, because you want to build in nutrients that the plant can feed on through the whole season. And then I do also add in these nutrients. So the blood meal or green sand, the rock phosphate, so like, again, in a big mix like this, I would do like 1/3 of a cup, 1/3 of a cup, and 1/3 of a cup of each of them in that mix. Okay, so this is on the last one. We are in a couple minutes, we get to the last thing. Oh yeah, question. Yeah.
So you're saying that you basically use 4 parts of potting. I'm not going to have that brand available.
Yeah. A potting mix.
Soil.
Yep.
And I'm going to use 4 parts of those.
Yep.
And add 1 part of
Compost.
Either created myself.
Yes. Yep.
Use lobster.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's 1 part. And then I would also add a cup
of some general purpose fertilizer.
Yeah. You like to use, if you bake it, fix it yourself, you use 1 part of blood meal, 1 part oatmeal, and what's the 3rd one?
Green sand. So green, yeah. And it's in the handouts kind of thing. Yeah. So, and then that going back quick to this, that's what I was saying. If you don't want to mix stuff like things like this are general. Yeah. Yeah, and it's like more economical over time to buy the big bags. There you go. Yeah. Yep. In words and in pictures. Okay, so water, fertility, and rest. The fertility part, we're kind of there, but set your alarms to water stuff. Okay, this is your friend. Okay, phone or whatever. Find the times of day where you know you're home and where you can set alarms to water. And so my general thing that I think of is sometime in the morning, I want to check and make sure that nothing's dried out. And I want to water. Summer months, you're going to probably have to water in the morning so it can use that water all day long. And then sometime in the afternoon, when I get home from work or whatever, I want to check those plants again, make sure nothing's wilted, and I probably want to water just in case. In a container, you really are going to water a couple times a day. So that means you go away. So containers are different than your regular garden. Remember your regular garden. So here's the thing. You can help with these containers by putting them closer together so they have less surface area that's exposed, and maybe even putting something like straw or some kind of mulch on top. That mulch layer will be a layer that gets dried out by the wind, but holds in the moisture longer. It makes it so that you don't have to water as much. But this is my tip. This is like when I worked on farms, my job was to come in and like water a whole bunch of stuff. And then we did some tasks, we moved a lot of plants, and then later on, I'd have to water all that same stuff again. Like that was my job over and over, was watering. And so between the seasons, we kind of already touched on this, the idea of revitalizing and adding compost each year. The same amount of compost that you would add when you're making your mix, you'd want to think about that same volume of like, how many parts do I have here? 4 parts, break it up into 5 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4. and maybe take some soil out. And you don't even have to mix all the compost in. You can put the compost right on top. The plant, and yes, there still are some like things in there. They'll still move it all around. They'll grow roots and it'll all work out. So I had somebody who was like, my containers are all full of soil. What do I do? It's like, you just scoop some out and then put some compost in. It really is that easy. We talked about cleaning things. We talked about cleaning things to avoid pest and disease. And we talked about rotating crops. So that's good. Oh man, row covers are magic. Row covers are, you learn about this. This is what the pros use. If you want to be like them, Google this thing, look up row covers. It's going to change your life no matter what you're growing. Okay. And what else is a bonus thing? Oh, my favorite tools, double wheeled wheelbarrow, double wheel, 2 wheels, never falls over on you, huge capacity. Okay. Timers on waters, that can be handy, but quick connects. Quick shut off valves on your hoses so that when you're changing things, you shut it off at the end of your hose instead of going all, and you shut it off at the end and then it just spray all over you. And then you got these quick connect things that you quick connect and then put your watering wand on and like that. Yeah, quick connect watering wand, shut off valves. Oh my God, too many pictures of this, but that watering wand, this is the one tool that you need for watering. Okay, it breaks up the water into a rain so that it doesn't like flood everything out. It also helps you target things. And if you're doing like baskets and stuff like that, it's excellent on those watering ones, and avoid stuff like this. These tools do everything marginally well, but it doesn't do the rain that well. Get that, spend the money on that. Okay. Bye guys. Love you. We're good. Okay. That's been an hour and a half.